皆さん、改めましてこんにちは。EducationUSA ウェビナー、米国大使館領事部に聞く学生ビザ申請のウェビナーを始めます。始める前に EducationUSA についてご存じない方もいらっしゃると思いますので、簡単にご紹介させていただきます。EducationUSA はアメリカ国務省教育文化局の支援を受けた世界170カ国以上で活動する数百に及ぶ EducationUSA センターのネットワークです。EducationUSA センターは世界中にアメリカの高等教育についての理解を深めてもらうべく、アメリカの認定を受けた教育機関に関する正確で公正最新の情報を提供しています。日本のエデュケーション USA センターはアメリカ大使館領事館を拠点としております。エデュケーション USA 東京はアメリカ大使館と日米教育委員会の共同運営となっております。先ほどお話ししましたが、11月第3週はインターナショナルエデュケーションウィークといって、国際教育交流の素晴らしさを称える1週間となっております。先週の木曜日のアメリカ大学院留学説明会を、はじめとして、今週は、3つのウェビナーを行います。本日、ビザの説明ということで、明日はコミュニティカレッジに関する説明。で、21日木曜日は大学院留学に関する、ウェビナーと、フェアが行われますので、ぜひこちらの方もご参加ください。はい、それでは、ここから領事部のお二人をお招きしていますので、お二人にお話しいただきたいと思います。本日は、副領事のジールーさんから説明をしていただきます。そしてサポートに安田さんが入ってくださっています。よろしくお願いいたします。
はい、皆さん、こんにちは。Hello。私はルージーさんです。今、アメリカ大使館の領事部で働いています。今日、アメリカの学生のビザについて説明すると思います。皆さん、本当にアメリカで勉強する興味を持ってくださることをありがたく思っております。本当に私の日本語はまだまだですから、今日英語で説明すると思います。でも全部のスライドは日本語です。じゃあ英語で始めましょう。OK。学生のビザは何ですか？ What are student visas? Well, we have two major types. The first one is the F1 visa, which typically are degree program visas. So, for example, when you think of studying high school in the US, that would be an F1 visa. Or if you want to study English in the US, that would usually be an F1 visa. If you want to go to university or go pursue a graduate program, that would usually be an F1 visa. We also have M1 visas, which are professional student visas. And so typically, you would think of vocational or technical school. So, for example, if your dream is to be a pilot and you really want to learn how to fly a plane, we have a lot of schools like that in the US. You would usually be going on an M1 visa. We also have a lot of applicants want to be a ballet dancer. If you want to go to ballet school, that would usually also be an M1 visa. We have a lot of students going to the US every year. For the 2022 to 2023 academic year alone, from Japan, we had over 16,000 international students going to the US. So you can imagine how many people are interested in studying in the US every year. And we are really happy and excited that you are interested as well. So one of the really great programs that we have, and something that I think is super cool, is called OPT. If you hadn't heard of it before, that stands for Optional Practical Training. And basically, it's a special program that's part of our F1 visa program. So after you finish your F1 degree, You can work in the US in a field that's related to your studies for up to 12 months, so up to 1 year. And this does require USCIS approval. The 1 year limit is for non-STEM degrees. So if you haven't heard of STEM, that stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So if you study a STEM degree, you can actually extend for more than a year. After you finish your first year, you can extend for another 24 months. So that's 3 years in total. And this is a super, super cool program. It gives you the opportunity to actually practice what you've learned. And I definitely encourage you to take advantage of it if you can. And also, if you're deciding between a non-STEM degree or a STEM degree, this is something to keep in mind. Now for high schools, there is a difference between public and private high schools for purposes of the visa. So if you're going to a public high school, you could apply for an F1 or a J1, depending on the situation. And at a public high school, you can only study in the US for up to 1 year. You also have to provide financial proof that you can actually afford the tuition for the year and also living expenses. Now, for a private high school, it's a little bit different in that there is no limit for how long. There's no 1 year limit. So you could theoretically do all 4 years of high school in the US at a private school. And that is also an F1 visa. For proof of financial ability to actually pay for your schooling, we only need to see 1 year. Okay, and so I mentioned here for the public high school, an F1 or a J1. You might wonder, what's a J1 visa? Well, a J1 visa is for exchange visitors. And so on the screen, you can see a list of typical J1 applicants that we get. So for example, au pair, if you want to intern in the US at a company, if you want to conduct research, maybe you've heard of the Fulbright scholarship, the Fulbright program. So Fulbright scholars go to the US on a J1 visa. And that's for educational or research purposes because they've received financial support from the US government or for other J1 scholars from the Japanese government. That's also possible. Now, one of the programs I want to highlight because it's really, really fun and cool is the Summer Work Travel Program. So under this program, you get to work and travel in the US. So this is the Cultural Exchange Initiative. And even though it's called Summer Work Travel, don't be fooled. It doesn't have to be during the summertime. You can also go during your winter vacation. So in Japan, I think that's between January 15th to March 31st. And there are a lot of benefits to this program because, like I mentioned, you get to work and make some money. You get to travel and see the US. During this time, you can also, practice your English, learn more about American culture. And you might wonder, well, what are jobs I can work on for this J1? Well, typically we have applicants apply to work in the hospitality or retail or tourism industries. And so these are usually seasonal or temporary jobs. But we have a link underneath that slide and also a QR code. So if you're interested, definitely check it out later. There's a lot of important information on there and recommendations for how you might be able to apply and travel on the Summer Work Travel Program. Okay, we know we have a lot of parents on the call today. For parents, we highly encourage you to visit your children while they're studying in the US. It's a really good time for you to get a vacation and also see what your child's life is like in the United States. Sometimes we have parents asking if they need a special visa for visiting their F1 or M1 students. You do not. If you're just going to visit them for vacation, you can travel by ESTA under the Visa Waiver Program. Or if you don't qualify for ESTA, you can apply for a B1, B2 visa. But for spouses and children of the visa holders, if you're dependent, there is a special visa category for you. So for F1 family members, you would be a F2. And for J1 family members, you would be a J2. But there's a lot of information on our website about that as well. So please apply for your visa. Okay, now that we've done the introductory portion to all the visas, we'll get into the actual application process. How do you apply for a student visa? I know sometimes it can seem complicated, but I promise you the process is very straightforward and very easy. So on the screen right now, we have the 5 overall steps for applying for a visa. I'll go through each of them in detail as well. And I'll also be explaining some tips and not really tricks, but like best practices for applying. So make sure you're following along. Let me go back and I'll do a quick run through of each of these. So the first one, we have the I-20 or DS 2019 forms. Those are basically forms that certify you are enrolled in the school you are applying for. PDF version is okay when you submit it to us. The second thing is the DS 160. So make sure you make DS 160, fill out the application online. We have a note from someone in the office. If you have any questions or if you react to any of the things in the call, you can click the react button. So react with a heart or react with a thumbs up if the stuff makes sense to you. And that'll help give me feedback too. Oh, thank you. This will give me feedback too as I'm presenting in case there's anything you would like me to explain further or if there's things that made a lot of sense. Okay, so to continue. Then we have the DS 160 form. Make sure to fill that out. And then we also have the SEVIS fee. Make sure to pay that. And then number 4 is the profile. So in the profile making stage, you'll also have to pay the application fee, which is separate than the SEVIS fee from number 3. So make sure you keep those two separated and in mind. And then number 5 is depending on your situation, you can either apply and interview in person at the US Embassy in Tokyo or one of the consulates. Or if you qualify, you can participate in USO Shinsei, which is application by mail. And then I'll also just make sure to note that the consulate in Fukuoka does not accept interviews. So if you have to interview in person, pick the location accordingly to what is easiest and most convenient for you. I also want to note first that if you do qualify for mail-in, we highly recommend you take advantage of that. It is faster, it is easier, it is more convenient for you. Okay, and so if you're applying for a visa for the first time, there are some conditions you have to meet in order to qualify. So this screen has the 5 qualifications that you might need to consider depending on your situation. So the first one is if you're a Japanese citizen or if you're a citizen of another visa waiver program country, then you may qualify. Number 2, if you're a legal foreign resident of Japan and you hold a residence card, a Zairyu card, and you currently reside in Japan, then you may be eligible. Number 3, if you have been interviewed before and you were issued a visa that isn't just a B1, B2, or B1, B2 visa, and you haven't been refused a visa since you received that first one, then you may qualify. Number 3, if your previous visa is still valid, you may qualify. Or if that previous visa has expired, but it expired less than 48 months ago, then you may still qualify. And then lastly, 5th, last but not least, is if you have not been arrested in any country, then you may qualify. So if you have been arrested, you would not qualify for the USO Shinsei. And then lastly, in red, this is highlighted because this has changed from previous years. If you have only traveled to the US on ESTA and you have never come in for an interview, then you would not qualify for USO Shinsei. And then for the mail-in for Yuso Shinsei, only Osaka and Tokyo accepts the mail-in applications. Okay, again, as I mentioned, the mail-in application is faster, it is easier, and it is definitely more convenient. You can do it from the comfort of your couch at home, like that emoji on the screen. And you can skip the wait times for making an appointment and having to come in for an interview. So definitely take advantage of that if you can. Okay, and this is a list of all the documents that we typically request you to bring in for an interview, and also documents that you need in general for this application process. I will say this may not be the complete list depending on when you interview, so always check our website for the most updated information. But real quick, I'll just run through. You'll need your passport, of course. The visa will go inside of your passport. You'll need the DS-160, which we talked about earlier. You'll need a color photo, and I'll talk about that more later. You'll need the I-20 or a DS-2019, depending on which visa you're applying for. You'll need to pay the service fee. And also, if you're not doing mail-in, you'll need the interview confirmation. Okay, so now I'll go over each of those 5 previous steps we talked about in detail. So this is where you'll want to listen very carefully. So for the I-20 or DS-2019, like I mentioned before, this basically certifies that you're enrolled in school and you are using the student visa to go study in the US. Again, this document does not have to be, the document that you send to us does not have to be the original paper form. You can just submit a copy of your PDF file. That is okay. However, please make sure that all the signatures on your forms are filled out. Otherwise, that may lead to a delay in your processing. Some people might ask, now that I have my form from the school, when can I actually apply for a visa? Well, some people don't know this, but actually, once you've received your documents, you can receive the visa itself up to 365 days before your program even starts. So as soon as you receive those documents from your school, we highly recommend you to apply as soon as you can. That way, you don't have to worry about any delays. You can have the visa in hand and just focus on preparing for your studies, especially if you are applying next summer. So June to August is typically our peak student visa season of the year. Everyone is applying for visas. They're going to start school in the fall. So it might be difficult to get an interview appointment time. So if you don't want to worry about this, then apply as early as possible. Okay, now for the DS-160. On the right here, we have a screenshot of what filling out the application for the DS-160 looks like on the home page. I want to emphasize 2 things for the DS-160. The first is that it can take over, it actually often does take over 1 hour to complete. We ask you for a lot of information just to make sure we have your file complete with us. So make sure you have, like when you sit down to complete this form, you have time set aside to do it well. Because the second thing I want to emphasize is once you submit it, once you click the submit button, you cannot go back and make any changes. So make sure you're reading all the questions clearly, make sure the responses you're putting in are correct before you click submit. And there is a save button, so don't worry too much about that. Save continuously while you're filling out the application. And you can always make changes before you hit submit. Okay, the next thing is the service fee. So the service fee you can pay at this website or by scanning the QR code. And the reason service fee is talked about first on this slide is because it is one of the most common mistakes that applicants make. and one of the most common reasons for why a visa is delayed in processing. A lot of people forget to pay it. So make sure you go to that link, just pay the fee, and then you'll be okay. The second reason for why a lot of visas get delayed in processing is because students accidentally apply for the wrong visa type. So we mentioned I-20 form, and we mentioned the DS-2019 form. The I-20 is with the F visa. The DS-2019 is with the J visa. You don't usually have to worry about the form. Your school knows which one to give you. So after you've received the form from your school, just make sure you're selecting the right visa category when you're actually submitting your application. And then the third reason why a lot of visas get delayed, and I said I would talk about this earlier, is the photo that an applicant submits when they're applying for their visa. So on the left-hand side here, you see a green circle. Above it, it says good. That is an example of a photo we like. So we don't want you to be wearing any glasses. We want to see your full face clearly. Please no shadows behind you. And then we also like a white background. So I know a lot of the photo booths in Japan, they can print with a blue background. The blue background, unfortunately, does not work for our visa application. So when you're printing your photo, please make sure to select white background. We also need a photo that was taken within the past 6 months. So if you've used a photo that you took a year ago to apply for your passport or to apply for another visa, that will not work. We need one within the past 6 months. And then lastly, something that we've noticed more common than not with the photos that we're receiving is they'll be edited or photoshopped. Unfortunately, for the visa application, we need a photo that looks 100% like you. I also like to edit my photos sometimes before I post on social media, but for the visa application, we do need one that looks like you. Otherwise, we'll just ask you to take a new one. And there also is, if you come in for an interview, there is a photo booth at the interview location. So if your photo doesn't work, we'll just ask you to take a new one there. So don't worry too much about that. Okay, next is the profile. So for the profile, you can create this entire profile online. From here, you will pay the visa application fee. So as I mentioned earlier, the application fee is separate than the service fee. They are different. So make sure you pay both. And then when you're making the profile, in this stage, you'll also be asked to fill out a questionnaire. The questionnaire will let you know if you can apply by mail, if Yuso Shinsei applies to you. If it does, you will receive a mail-in confirmation page. If it does not, then you will be asked to schedule an interview and you will receive an appointment confirmation page at the end. And then also want to mention, so here this is a slide with a summary of what I just talked about. If you have any questions, you can also submit it through your profile. And so if you see that QR code at the bottom of the screen, if you scan that, it'll take you to where you can make and set up your profile. Okay, and then lastly, in this series of steps, we have interview versus mail-in. If you are interviewing because you don't qualify for mail-in, please do not be nervous. The interview is very fast. Usually it's just 1 to 2 minutes. And basically, we just want to get a sense of who you are, your background, why are you interested in studying in the US? And we might want to learn a little bit more about what you want to do after you graduate from your program in the US. Don't worry about that though. We don't need a 10-year plan from you with thought out details of what you want to do for the rest of your life. We just want to know that you've given a little bit of thought to why you want to pursue this degree and why you want to do it in the United States. All right, so that is a slide with some of the questions that I said we might ask you. So again, don't worry, it is very fast and simple. And yeah, once you interview, you'll be on your way. So after you've done your interview, or if you submit it by mail, how long does it take you to receive your visa? If you are approved at the window, if you're approved at the time of interview, then it will take about 10 days for the visa and passport to be ready for you to pick up or to be mailed back to whatever address you put in your application. If you select mail-in, then you will receive your visa and passport within 5 business days. So again, as you can see here, mail-in is a lot faster than having to come in for an interview. Now, some people wonder if they need to renew their visa. What is the process for that? If you have received a visa and you have to renew, you may be qualified to do it by mail, so you don't have to come in again. But please make sure the visa has to be either valid or expired. If it is expired, it has to have expired within the last 4 years, so within the last 48 months. Otherwise, you will not qualify for renewing by mail. So this is a little bit different than when you're applying for a student visa for the first time. When you're applying for the first time, you have to either be a Japanese national or from a visa waiver program country. But for renewals, you do not. And again, there's a lot more information about this online. I know sometimes it can get a little complicated. So we have our website below, and then also, again, a QR code for you to scan if you want to look up more information about this process. Beyond visa renewals, we get a lot of other questions like, if I'm changing schools in the US, what do I do? Or can I work in the US? Well, we have a really good video for you to watch. Our deputy visa chief at Embassy Tokyo created this super helpful video that you can watch on YouTube, and it'll answer a lot of your commonly asked questions. So make sure to watch this if you haven't already. I'll give you a little sneak peek though of some of the things that might be in the video, such as after you have your visa, when can you go to the US? You're excited. You want to travel to the United States and start your program. Okay, well, after you have your visa, you can travel to the US up to 30 days before your program starts. And that's to give you time to find a place to live if you haven't already. It gives you time to meet some of your classmates and make some new friends. And also, very importantly, it gives you time to find the best restaurants in the area so that you can have a really good and fun time in the US. Now, when you're done with your program, you have either 30 or 60 days, depending on your visa type, before you must return to your country and leave the United States. So for the J visa type, you have 30 days. And for the F1 type, you have 60 days. And then for the M1 visa holders, you also have 30 days, like the J visa. And so this basically gives you time to, pack up your stuff, have a goodbye party if you want, and basically prepare for your trip home. Now, when you enter the US, you will receive a stamp in your passport, and there will be an admit until date written on your stamp. So make sure to note that. Just make sure you leave the US before that date, and you will be okay. All right, if you have questions throughout this process, we know there are a lot of steps, but we are always here to help you. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. The first thing you can check out with questions is our US Visa Navigator page. So to access this, go to our embassy website and then click on the Contact Us. And from Contact Us, you will be able to find the Visa Navigator page. A lot of our frequently asked questions are already on here. But if for some reason the answer to your question is not already on here, then please reach out to our call center. This is the information for our call center. You can either contact via phone, so you can call us, you can send an email, or you can live chat. And so the live chat is a really cool function because there's an actual real person on the other end of it, and they will be able to give you your answer right away. So if you're able to use live chat, I would recommend that as the fastest and easiest way to get an answer. I also want to note that when you get a response, so if you're, for example, submitting a question by email, when you get a response, the response goes to your profile. So I mentioned earlier you create a profile, and the reason the response goes there is because we want to keep it personalized to you and to make sure you get the answers to whatever question you asked. When you get the response in your profile, you will receive an email notification to log into your profile. So please keep an eye out for that. Sometimes we have applicants reaching out saying they never got a response. It could be because that email notification went to your spam or junk folder. So make sure to check that to see if you've heard back from us. Okay. One more thing I want to highlight is our X page. It is US Visa Tokyo. That is our X account, formerly Twitter. If you follow us on there, then you will receive and be able to keep up to date on our most recent policy changes or any tips for applying for a visa. So definitely follow us on there if you have not already. You can scan the QR code right now. I'll give you some time to do that. Because next on our agenda, after we have finished this presentation portion, is our Q&A. All right. Okay, did I pass it over to you?
はい、それではですね、皆様から事前にいただいた質問が6つありますので、これからその回答をさせていただきます。日本語でいただいた質問には日本語で回答させていただき、英語でいただいた質問は英語で領事が回答させていただき、私が、後で日本語で翻訳をさせていただきます。また、ウェビナー中にも新しい質問をいくつかいただきましたので、時間内に間に合えば回答をさせていただきたいと思います。では、1つ目の質問いきます。日本語です。ワシントンユニバーシティに4年生に通う方、E ビザをお持ちの方です。現在、E ビザでアメリカの大学に通学しています。親の帰任により21歳になるより前に F ビザに切り替える必要がありそうです。アメリカで F に切り替えるのが良いか、または夏休み中に一度日本に帰国して F に切り替えるのが良いか、判断がつきません。短い期間で切り替えができる方法で申請したいです。夏休み前に親が帰任になった場合はアメリカで切り替えるしかないのですが、緊急で申請は特に理由がなく、なるべく早く切り替えたいという理由でも通るのでしょうか。オンキャンパスジョブ、インターンシップが今の E ビザではできないので、早く F1 ビザに切り替えたいと思っています。という質問です。この回答としては、E ビザの扶養家族は、米国移民局 USCIS を通じて F1 ビザへの資格変更を申請するか、または海外の米国大使館、領事館で F1 ビザを申請することができます。米国での資格変更には長い時間がかかる場合があります。詳しくは米国の移民局にお問い合わせください。またタイミングなどにも注意してください。先ほど領事がプレゼンテーションの中で説明したように、現在有効なビザ、または過去48ヶ月以内に執行したビザをお持ちの方は、日本に帰国後、F1 ビザを郵送で申請することができます。郵送でのビザ更新には現在5日間かかります。でもこちらの方が早いかもしれませんので、郵送でのビザの更新とか郵送申請を検討してください。では、2つ目の質問に行きます。J1 ビザをお持ちの方から、お二人の方から同じような質問が入っております。まず1つ、J1 ビザを延長するためには、日本に帰国することが必須でしょうか。 もし帰国が必須な場合、延長することと再取得の違いはどのような点にありますか？またその費用や取得までの期間、制限のかかり方などを教えてほしいという方。もう一人の方、1年間留学予定なのですが、1セメスター分の DS2019 しかもらえませんでした。現地でビザの延長手続きはできるのでしょうか？という J1 に関わる質問です。こちらの回答としては、一般的に米国で J1 ビザの有効期限が切れた場合、J1 ビザの資格で米国に滞在するために、帰国して J1 ビザを更新する必要はありません。大学の留学生化を通じて J1 の資格の延長を申請し、申請が許可されると、DS2019 フォームと米国の滞在許可が延長されますが、パスポートのビザは自動的に延長されません。延長に関する情報は大学のウェブサイトを確認してください。ほとんどの大学がこの J1 の資格の延長ですとか、ビザの更新とかについての情報をお持ちですので、まずは自分の大学のウェブサイトで確認をしてください。また、パスポートに貼られたビザの有効期限が切れた後に、米国外へ渡航した場合、ビザを更新して米国に戻るには、その国にある米国大使館または領事館でビザの更新を申請する必要があります。米国内でビザを更新することはできませんので、ご注意ください。次いきますね。では次、3つ目の質問になります。毎年6月あたりのビザ面接予約が取りにくいですが、もし取れない場合、また渡航日が迫っている場合は、どのように対処すればよろしいでしょうかという質問です。こちらはですね、先のプレゼンテーションで領事がお話ししたように、学生ビザ申請者または交流訪問ビザ申請者の方、I-20 または DS2019 が届いたらすぐにビザを申請することをお勧めいたします。新入生の F ビザおよび M ビザはコース開始日の365日前まで発給可能です。プログラム開始日が14日以内の場合、学生ビザ申請者は緊急面接予約リクエストを送信することが可能です。緊急面接予約リクエストの送信方法については、米国ビザ申請ウェブサイトをご覧ください。次、4つ目の質問に移ります。学生ビザ取得にあたって残高証明が必要とのことですが、残高がどれくらいあれば大丈夫でしょうか。また、ジャストの奨学金を得ている場合でも、口座にそれなりの金額が入っていないと、ビザの取得は難しいでしょうかというご質問。そしてですね、先ほどのウェビナー中にも、口座にどれぐらい、残高が入っていればいいんでしょうかというご質問、同じ質問をいただきました。こちらの回答といたしましては、ごめんなさい。銀行残高証明書は学生ビザ申請の必須書類ではありません。先ほども、領事が紹介したプレゼンテーションにあるように必須書類の中には入っておりません。領事から提出を求められた方、そのケースの場合は銀行残高証明書等の財政証明の提出が必要になります。必須書類ではありませんので、ご心配いただかなくて大丈夫だと思います。もし補足書類として領事から提出を求められた方は、米国ビザ申請ウェブサイトの学生ビザまたは交流訪問者ビザの中に補足書類、オプションという欄がありますので、そちらの情報を参考にして、書類を用意してください。補足書類として提出を求められた場合、例えば初年度のあらゆる費用を賄う十分な資金があること、および米国滞在中のあらゆる費用を賄う十分な資金があることを証明でき、申請を補足する財務書類等を出していただければ結構です。また、M1 申請者の方は、留学予定期間の全学費および生活費を支払う能力があることを証明しなければいけません。また他者の方から金銭的な支援を受けている場合は、支援者との関係の証明、出生証明書など、 または支援者の直近の納税証明書原本、また支援者の預金通帳および定期預金証書等を持参してください。銀行残高証明書の原本または通帳の原本を提示できない限り銀行取引明細書のコピーは受理できませんので気をつけてください。ジャストからの奨学金をいただく方は、ジャストの方から、奨学金の受給者である証明書等が出るかと思われますので、そちらの証明書のコピーを出していただいても結構かと思います。はい。次。5つ目の質問に移ります。5つ目はですね、私の子供は2025年9月から F1 ビザでアメリカの大学に入学します。同時に私たち家族は EB5 カテゴリー投資で米国の永住権、グリーンカードを申請済みです。子供がすでに F1 ビザで米国に滞在し、残りの家族が日本に残った後にグリーンカードを取得した場合はどうなるのでしょうかという質問です。こちらの質問、英語でいただいていました。すみません、領事お願いします。
Okay, thank you. So for this question, it depends on whether or not you have already received the F1 visa. Let's say in the first example, you have not applied for the F1 visa, but you have already applied for the EB5 category visa. In that case, when your child comes to interview or to apply for a visa, we recommend for them to just be honest with us. So let us know that you're applying for an immigrant visa. When you're filling out the documents, when it asks you, have you applied for an immigrant visa? Just check yes, because you have. And we will keep that in mind while we are adjudicating the visa. Please know that applying for an immigrant visa does not necessarily mean you cannot apply for a non-immigrant visa. So just because you are applying for EB5, that does not mean you cannot apply for F1. You can do both at the same time. But whether or not the visa is approved depends on your whole application. So that is something we will consider while we interview you or look over your mail-in application. But please don't worry that there's both at the same time.
この方、F1 ビザをすでに申請しているのか、持っているのか、まだこれからなのかちょっとわからないんですけれども、まだ F1 ビザを申請していなくて、これから申請する場合は、DS160 の、質問の中に移民ビザを申請したことがありますかですとか、移民ビザを申請するために請願書をファイルしたことがありますか等の質問がありますので、その DS160 ビザ申請書、非移民ビザの申請書ですね。に正直に回答して、はいという回答をしてほしいということ。そして、EB5 の移民ビザを申請しているからといって、非移民ビザが申請できないということではありませんので、どちらの書類も、F1 ビザの書類を受けたときに、その DS160 等の申請書を領事が見て、審査をして、ビザが出るかどうかということに対して判断をいたします。まだちょっと、状況が読めないので、この方はもしかしたら EB5 の、カテゴリーの方の審査というか、申請ができるような状態になりましたら、コールセンターに一度状況を知らせていただいて、問い合わせをしていただいた方がいいかもしれません。ご質問があれば。
And that was the first example. So if, because based on the question, it's hard to tell if you've already received the F1 visa. If your child has already holds the F1 visa, and then while they're studying in the US, your green card comes through or your application is approved for the immigrant visa, and your question is whether or not they can change status while they are in the US, then that is a question for USCIS, for US Citizenship and Immigration Services.
もし F1 ビザをすでにお持ちの方であれば、現地で F1 ビザを持って滞在しながら、チェンジオブステータス、ステータスの変更という申請ができるかもしれませんので、その場合は、米国内の USCIS にお問い合わせをしてみてください。 あと、最後の質問、最後にいただいていた質問に移ります。未成年に同行できる親が申請できる B1、B2 ビザで滞在期間を申請時に申告するとき、子どもが2年間 F1 で滞在予定であれば、親の B1、B2 申請時に申告する滞在日数も2年として申請していいのでしょうか。それとも6ヶ月または1年未満までとして申請すべきでしょうか。という質問をいただきました。こちらは領事のプレゼンテーション最初の方で、親の動向について、ご説明したかと思うんですけれども、日本国籍な方であれば、エスタビザ免除プログラムで90日は、渡航が可能です。で B1、B2 なんですけれども、2年は、出ませんので、もし B1、B2 を申請すること自体は可能なので、申請はしてくださって結構なんですけれども、許可された場合は6ヶ月が最長になります。これが、今回、事前にいただいた質問への回答になります。はい、そしてですね、ビザセミナー中に、いただいたご質問がありますので、それにも回答させていただきたいと思います。F1 visa applicant is looking for a slot for interview. However, he cannot find any vacant slot. Yes. So he would like to change it. Can I change it to apply by mail from now after he chose the interview? Yes. And also, should he make DS-160 from the start again in that case?
So the question that we have received is, if I'm applying for an F1 and I originally picked the interview slot or the interview option, but cannot make the interview appointment or find an interview in time, can we change it to apply by mail? So you can change, actually, so there's another option. So for people who need an appointment right away, we have an emergency appointment. So that is also on the website. Information about it is all on there. You can get a faster appointment if you actually need your visa earlier and can show us why you need an appointment earlier. And again, this is a good reminder for everyone on the call. If you need your visa to study in the US or to travel to the US for F1, J1, M1, definitely make an appointment as early as you can. Again, up to 365 days before your program starts. As to whether or not you can apply by mail instead, I would suggest you to reach out to the call center and ask about that. So again, the information for the call center is here. Somebody there will be able to help you, especially if you do the live chat option, they'll be able to give you an answer right away. As for whether or not you need to make a DS-160 from start again, I believe the answer is you do not. The information is already under your name. The only thing you will have to change is the actual method of applying for the visa.
はい、ちょっと待ってくださいね。今、他にも、質問が来てるので、見ますね。
And again, if the explanations and answers that I'm giving on the call right now are helpful, then please feel free to react, just so I know that it made sense to whoever asked the question.
Okay. Question 4. This person would like to see the slideshow. Or
The slideshow?
What is the third question of the interview? She would like to see the slideshow for the interview. Yes. Okay. このスライドをですね、見るのを逃した方がいらっしゃって、領事が確認したいことの3つ目の質問を見たいそうなので、こちらです。 よろしいでしょうか。はい、次いきますね。次いただいた質問です。So, question number 5だね。This person would like to stay in America. 学生としてアメリカで滞在する間、寮ではなく、現地友人のアメリカ家庭に滞在予定です。その場合、その家庭の何か証明が必要でしょうか。So this person would like to study abroad in the US and then would like to homestay his friend's house. In that case, does that family needs to submit something to prove?
Typically, we don't ask where you're going to live. It's information that you submit in your application, but we have no requirements for where you must live. Your university, however, might have some requirements. A lot of schools might request or require you to live on campus in dormitory housing for the first year. So I would, one, make sure that it is okay with your university. And then two, just fill out the application with the best information that you have. And then three, when you come in for an interview and if the question comes up, where are you going to stay, then make sure you're able to explain it to the interviewer. And then four, as we mentioned before, sometimes we may request you to show us that you're able to pay for your living expenses and also, of course, for tuition for the first year. And so for the living expense portion, if that relates to where you stay, then just be prepared to give any documents that we request.
はい、まずですね、この方は、私たちのビザ申請には特にこういった書類は必要ないんですけれども、学校側が要求するかもしれませんので、学校に、最初に聞いてほしいということ、そして、DS160 の中に、米国で滞在する場所を書く欄があると思いますので、そちらの方に正直にその友人の方の住所とかお名前等を書いてください。あと、領事の面接受ける方でしたらば、領事の質問でどこに、滞在しますかとか聞かれるかもしれませんので、その質問には答えてください。また、財政証明、もし聞かれた場合に用意ができるようにしておいてください。財政証明についてはホームページをご覧ください。では次の質問に行きます。あと5分ですね。はい。質問。This person is trying to ビザ申請のプロファイルを作ったのでサインインしようとしていますが、合っているはずなのにキャプチャテキストが間違っていると言われ、サインインすることができません。新しくアカウントを作る必要がありますか？また、このようなシステムの問題はどこに問い合わせればよいでしょうか？ So this person made a profile and he cannot sign in. Yeah, because of the error of the capture. So, yes.
I'm sorry to hear, first of all, that you're having troubles with creating a profile account. The best thing that I would recommend for you to do, again, to get an answer right away, is to reach out to our call center. And again, I'll put that information up for you to see. Someone there should be able to help you or at least give you a solution.
はい、システムのことでですね、何か問題がありましたら、カスタマーサービスセンターまで、こちらに載っている方法を使って、すぐに連絡するようにしてください。お願いいたします。ご協力をお願いします。
Okay, question number 6. And I believe this will be our last question because of time. Do factors such as career gaps, work history, or age negatively affect obtaining an F1 visa?
キャリアのギャップですとか、職歴または年齢がですね、F1 ビザの取得に何か障害になることはありますかというご質問です。
The answer is not directly. So basically, the answer is no. Having a career gap in and of itself or your age does not directly mean you cannot apply for an F1 visa or you will be rejected an F1 visa. Really, when we look at an application, we look at your profile as a whole. We look at why you, at this point in your life, at this time, want to study in the US. So if you're able to explain it and it makes sense, then there is no issue with having a career gap or an age that is not the typical age for going to get an undergrad degree, for example.
回答はノーです。キャリアのギャップですとか年齢によって、ビザが取りにくくなるといった障害にはなりません。人生の中でこの時点で私はアメリカで勉強したいと考えた理由ですとか背景とかそういったことをもし領事に聞かれた場合に簡潔に話せるように用意していただければと思います。はい。
Okay. And I believe those are all of our questions for today. So again, I want to thank you all for your interest in studying in the US, for taking the time to listen in to this call today. 本当にありがとうございました。アメリカで楽しんで頑張ってください。Bye bye. Okay, now stop sharing.
ありがとうございました。それではこれでセミナー終了したいと思いますが、今週初めにもお話ししましたように、インターナショナルエデュケーションウィークということで、明日は、同じお昼の時間帯に、コミュニティカレッジから始める留学とそのメリットというセッションを行います。また木曜日にはアメリカの大学院留学出願のコツというウェビナーを行います。また夕方には、大学院のフェア、バーチャルフェアも行われますので、ぜひ皆さんご参加ください。それでは、良い午後をお過ごしください。ありがとうございました。